All right, so this lesson is all about area of triangles and the missing side lengths as well. But the big focus that we're talking about here is finding the area, and the equation that we're using is very similar to the old area triangle equation that you guys have seen in the past, where it's 1/2, which is usually it's 1/2 times the side times the height, or the height times the base. But in this case, it's 1/2 times A, which is MB, which is basically two sides, times the sine of the angle. It's the sine of the angle between them. So we'll call that angle C. Okay. So basically, the angle between the two angles is the one that we're going to be using. So just like law of cosines, it uses the same parts. So here, this is the angle in the middle, which if I label this, let's say we label this C, this would be little c, and that's B, so little b, and this is A, so little a. We're going to use that angle, C, and then these two sides. All right, so the area in this case will be equal to 1/2 times one side times the other side times the sine of the angle between them. So what's important is that if you're given more than one angle, make sure you're using the angle that's between the two sides, not the one that's across from them. Okay, so now basically going to use the scientific calculator for this one, that on Desmos. So 1 divided by 2, click that over, and we're going to do 10 times 20 times the sine of 30. So that's 50. Remember, in area, we do units squared. There is no units specified here, so we'll just write units with the little square. Okay. All right, so now this one says consider the triangle below, solve for x in the diagram. So in this case, we're not looking for the area. Now we're practicing our skills that we had in the last lesson, which was using law of sines. Okay, and we'll write up the other one, law of cosines. Okay, so make sure you guys are brushing up on that. Make sure you have done this, that lesson of law of sines and law of cosines before you do this one. So, and also just notice that lesson 7.4, we're skipping that one, so we're not doing that one. So lesson 7.5 is actually comes before lesson 7.3, and that's the order I put on Schoology. So make sure you guys are doing this one before you get to this one. All right, so we're going to solve for x. So we're looking for this one here, or in this case, that side right there. All right, so we got to look and see what we have to decide whether we're going to use law of sines or law of cosines. So we'll write these in as we use them. All right, so law of sines, we need an opposite angle and side. Well, I see one here. We have a known opposite angle and side, and this is the side we're looking for. So we need that angle right there. We don't have it. But if you notice, we have two angles in the triangle. So if I have two angles, I can find the third. So what I'm going to have to do first is find that third angle. Okay, so I'm going to use the triangle sum theorem and just basically subtract these two angles from 180. And that will give me that third angle that I'm looking for. So 180 minus, what was that, 29 minus 68, 83 degrees. That's that angle right there. And remember, guys, when you're going through this, don't copy my work. Do your triangles, do yours. Remember, you have a certain triangle that you're working with, and I'm using a different one so that you know how to do it. Don't copy mine, okay? All right, I always say that, but just I have to remind you guys. All right, so before I set this up, let's label the sides. So A, B, C, that means this is little c, this is little b. So when we solve for x, we're actually looking for a little b, and this will be little a. Okay, so now remember, we're looking for a side. So if you remember from the last lesson, if we're looking for a side, we put that on top. So x goes over the top, and the side, the angle across from that is the one we just found. So we put the sine of that angle, and we put that equal to the opposite angle pair that we have, which is 4, and remember, put the side on top, over the sine of that opposite angle. Okay, so now if you remember the trick that I showed you guys, the shortcut when you cross multiply here is I can literally take this and put it up there. Okay, so I talked about that in the last homework help video. If you want to check out and see what I was doing there, just look at the first couple problems in the last video so you can see what I was doing. I'm basically just moving this up here. It's going to be the same as cross multiplying. So now x equals 4 times sine of 83 degrees divided by the sine of 29 degrees. And now I'm basically just going to plug that in to my Desmos calculator. Create a new line here. I'm going to create click division first so I can get the line in between. 4 times the sine of 83 degrees divided by sine of 29. Okay, so it's 8 point. Remember, typically with sides and angles, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So that'd be 8.2. And notice here that there's no unit of measure. So we'll just say 8.2 units. Okay, now we're going to find area. So we're going to use our area formula. So A is equal to 1 over 2. Now, remember with the area formula, just like before, we have to have the angle in between two sides. Excuse me. And this side is 8.2. So here's our other side we're going to be using now. So here's our two sides that we know, the 4 and the 8.2 and the 68's in the middle. So we're going to use those two sides in that angle. So it's going to be 4 times 8.2 times the sine of that angle between them, which is 68. Okay, so I'm just going to calculate that using Desmos. So 1 divided by 2 times 4 times 8.2 times sine of 68. So it's going to round up to 15.2. Now remember, with area, we write units, like I said in the last problem, units squared. Okay. All right, so now the next one. York County, Maine is a roughly triangular in shape. So it's kind of like a triangle. It's not exactly a triangle, but it's very similar to a triangle. And to help calculate its area, so you notice that that's what we're looking for. We're going to use the area formula. Sergio has decided to use a triangle to model the region, as shown right here. According to the map, to his map, the border of New Hampshire is 165 miles long. The one I'm going to use is 180 miles long, while the coastline along the Atlantic Ocean is 100 miles long. And for my example, I'm going to use 90 miles. If the angle at the tip of Maine is 43 degrees, so like the tip of Maine right here, and I'm using 35 instead of 43, as shown, at the tip of Maine is 43 degrees as shown in the diagram. What is the approximate area of York County? So we're basically looking for the area of this triangle region. Okay, so here we're going to set up our formula. Now remember, we need two sides with an angle in the middle. And here's our side on the left, which is 180, and our other side, 90, and an angle in the middle. So 180 times 90 times the sine of the angle in between the two. Pretty simple, right? We just set that up, and then we plug it in. So I did just like I did in the last problem. So 180 times 90, times the sine of, what was that, 35 degrees. So I get 4,645, and we'll round to the nearest tenth. So we look at the 9, we stop at the 6. The 6 is going to round that 9 up to 10. So that means that this is also going to bump up to the next one. So we'll round this to 4,646.0. So 4,400, wait, let me make sure I got that right. 646.0 units. And remember, it's area, so put the little square. Oh, and actually, this is not units. We're talking about miles. So miles squared, or square miles. 4,646 square miles is really how you pronounce that, okay? All right, so the next one, Farmer Jill has a problem. She lives on a triangular plot of land. So she's got this piece of land, it forms like a triangle, and it's surrounded on all three sides by a fence. Yesterday, one side of the fence was blown down by a storm. So you can see the storm here. She wants to determine the length of the side that needs to be rebuilt so she can purchase enough lumber. She wants to order the lumber online. So first, let's draw a picture of what this looks like. So you've got this triangle piece of land. Okay, and she said that one side got blown over. One side of that land got blown over. This is the fence line, and she wants to buy some lumber. She said that she has to order online um, and have it delivered quickly, but the weather is too poor for her to go outside and measure the length of the fence. So it's like too crazy outside. So she's going to order it online in her house, but she can't go outside and actually measure this by hand. Okay. So she decides to use the length of the two sides still standing. So she knows the length of the other side. She just doesn't know the length of this side. So let's say we'll call that X, right? She knows the length of the other two sides, which in my case is 120 feet. Yours is 116 and 214 feet. Remember, yours is 224. And the angle between these two sides is 44 degrees. But remember, yours is 58. Okay, draw the diagram of the situation. That's what we just did. Okay, with all the measurements. What is the length of the fence that needs to be replaced? So basically, what is the length of this? Show all the work and which tool did you use? Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is let's actually relabel this X with B. So we're going to look for B, okay? This is the one we're looking for. So that means this will be big B. We'll call that A. We'll call that C. So that means that this is going to be C and this is going to be A. I always like to label all my parts. So we're looking for B. We're looking for this one here. And we want to find the length of that side. All right, so we're not looking for the area. This second question asks for the area, but the first one's asking for the side. So that means that we don't have a right triangle, so we can't use SOHCAHTOA. We have to use law of sines or law of cosines. Okay, so let's actually write those up here. So I forgot to do that after doing this first problem. So to find law of sines, it's sine of big A over little a, sine of angle B over side B, and sine of angle C over side C. Law of cosines is whatever side you're looking for, right, squared equal to the other two sides squared, or the sum of them, you add them, and then you subtract 2 times those same sides, A and B, times the cosine of the angle across from the side that you're looking for, okay? So in this case, we can't do law of sines because these two signs don't have an angle across from them. So we have to use law of cosines with the angle in the middle and 2 on the side. All right, so we're looking for B, right? So let's set that up. So B squared equals A squared, so that'd be 120, plus C squared, which is the 214, minus 2 times those same sides, 120 times 214, times the cosine of the angle across from B, which is 44. Okay, so remember, like I told you before, when we're looking for the side, we just square root that whole thing. We'll just set that up here in Desmos. So we're going to hit the square root first. Do 120 squared plus, what was that, 214 squared. And then minus 2 times those same sides, 120, and then 214, and then times the cosine of the angle, 44. So we'll round it to nearest tenth, 152 point. This will round, the 8 will round that 4 up to 5, so 152.5 feet. So 152.5 feet is the side of the fence. What did we use? We used law of cosines. What is the area of our triangular plot of land? Okay, well, we're going to use the sine formula. Okay, the area sine formula. So 1/2 divided by Remember, we have to use the two. This is the side we found, but we want to use the two sides that are in between the angle that are on the sides of the angle. Okay, so we use the same sides. So 120 times 214 times the sine of the angle that's in the middle of them. And let's go ahead and plug that in. Desmos, 1 divided by half, 1 divided by 2, and then 214 times the sine of that angle this time. So it's going to be 8,919.4 square feet. Okay, so let me actually, so that's 8,919.4. Now you can write feet squared like that. So that's square feet, or you could write it out as well. Another way to do it would just be to write square feet like this, or you could even abbreviate it even more and put just SQ and then feet and then the abbreviated sign like that. So there's different ways you can kind of write that out. Okay. All right. So now on the back part. All right. So what does it ask for first? Solve for the missing side lengths. So remember, side lengths means law of cosines or law of sines here. What is the area of the triangle? We almost do kind of like the same thing as the last problem. We're just doing, it's just not like a real situation or, figurative situation. All right, so we have an angle, two sides on the side. So immediately we should be thinking law of cosines. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and label our triangle up. So it doesn't matter where you put these letters, guys. Okay, you can put them wherever you want. Just make sure that you got your little letters across from the same letter, all right? For the lowercase across from the uppercase. All right, so we're looking for the missing side. So what that means is you're looking to look for everything. Okay, so we're going to look for all missing sides. So let's just list them all out and write down what we know and write down what we don't know. Okay, so it looks like we have side A, so it's 8, side B, 15, and we have angle C, it's 50. So that's the only thing we do know. So I'm going to have to look for side C, side A, and side B. And again, it all depends on how you labeled it. Like if you put A here and B here and C here, then that would change which ones you know. Okay, but we know 3 out of the 6, basically. All right, so again, I recognize that we're going to use law of cosines right away because I have an angle in the middle of two sides. So let's use that to find this third side. Okay, so that means we're going to set up the C squared equals the other two sides, this other two sides squared and then added together. 15 squared plus 8 squared minus 2 times 15 times 8 times the cosine of the angle in the middle, 50. Then we square root of that all. Let's plug that in. Let's see, where'd my mouse go? There it is. 15 squared plus 8 squared minus 2, 15, out of there, 8, and then times the cosine of what was that? 50. Okay, so it's going to be 11.6. Round that up. So 11.6. So that's one side. All right, so now we have this side. Now, usually, like I said before, once you use the law of cosines, you can use law of sines to find the rest. Okay, so right under that, I'm going to use law of sines, and that means we know this pair, right? So I could either choose to find angle B or angle A. Doesn't matter what you want. Let's go ahead and find angle A. Okay. So we'll do sine of A. Remember, if you're looking for the angle, you put the sine of the angle on top and then the side across from it on the bottom. And then put the known pair that you have. So you know that you have sine of 50 and then the opposite side. Sine of 50 degrees over 11.6. And then I'm going to use my shortcut first to move this up here. So sine of angle A is equal to 8 times the sine of 50 degrees over 11.6. And again, remember, when you look for an angle, you need to do sine inverse. So angle A will then be equal to the sine inverse of this whole part of the equation, 8 times sine of 50 degrees divided by 11.6. Okay, so let's plug all that in. So here, and again, I went over all this stuff on how to set these up in the last video for 7.5. So make sure you guys have looked at that. If this is kind of going more into depth and kind of take more time to explain it, but I'm going a little quicker because we already went over this. So 31.8 is going to round up to 9 because of the 9 next to it, so 31.9. So 30.1.9 degrees. And we're running out of room here, but that's okay. So now A is 31.9 degrees, and we just got to find B. Now remember, once you have two angles, you can find the third by just adding the two, by subtracting them from 180. Okay, so I'm just going to do that up here because I'm kind of running out of room. So 180 minus 50, and then minus the 31.9. Just plug that in. 180 minus, what's that? 50 minus 31.9. It's 98.1. Okay, so that is our third angle, or angle B. 98.1. All right, so now we've completely solved the triangle. Last part is they want to know the area of the triangle. So we're completely solving this thing from head to toe. All right, so area is 1/2 times, remember, use a side where, I'm just going to use the original two sides that I was given with the angle in the middle. You just, at this point, once we know everything, which I can fill it all in, this is 31.9 degrees, this is 98.1 degrees. And now I know everything, so I can use any sides I want. But I'm just going to, again, use the ones I started with, the 8 and the 15. And then you got to use the angle in between those two sides. So make sure you use the angle that's in between the two sides you decide to use, okay? So now we just got to plug that in. So now 1/2 times 8 times 15 times sine of 50. So 45.9. That 6 is going to round the 9 up to 10, which means that the 6, this will also round up to 6. So 40.6. Sorry, 46.0. And there's no units here, so we'll just say units squared because it's area. Okay. All right. Next one. Here, we're going to solve for x twice in this triangle using one method and then another. So in other words, we're going to use law of sines and then law of cosines. All right. So we're solving for a side. Keep that in mind. So we'll do law of sines first, then we'll do law of cosines. Okay, so I'm solving for x here, so I'm going to label everything. A, B, C, so we'll call this little a. So basically we're going to look for a little a, and B and C. So we're looking for little a, so I'm going to put that on top, or x, and then the angle across of it, I'm going to do the sine of that. So sine of the 36. And then remember, I just got to pick another angle side pair. So I could use this one, or I could use this one. Either one works. I'll use the 21 and 75 degrees. So the side goes on the top. The sine of the opposite angle goes on the bottom. Again, I'm just going to use my little shortcut here. Move that up to the other side. So now x equals 21 times sine of 36 degrees divided by sine of 76 degrees. Okay. So once I get this once and I do it again, I can be sure I got it right because it should be the same answer twice because we're basically just solving this with two different methods. Okay, so then sine of 76 goes on the bottom, and I get 12.7. So 12.7, let's see if we have any units. Yep, so the one little tick mark means feet, so 12.7 feet. Okay, so now law of cosines. Now we're solving for little a, right? So that means little a, or x, goes on this side, and then the other two sides, the b and c, go on the other side. So we're going to do the square of the others, and then add them, and then 2 times those same sides times the cosine of the angle across from the side you're looking for. Okay, so the 36 is across from the side you're looking for, so that's the one we want to take the cosine of. And this one's pretty simple. I just basically plug again. How many times have we done this? Okay, we're going to square root that whole expression. Okay, so now square root 21 squared plus, what was that, 20 squared? I'm basically just copying down the same thing I just wrote. If you need to pause and rewind to go see what I just wrote, you can do that. Cosine of 36. Make sure you include everything under the square root. And I get 12.7. So that's what I expected. I should have got the exact same thing because, again, we're solving the exact same side of the same triangle, just doing it with two different methods. All right, the last part is all review. Okay, we got some exponential functions, and typically when you hear exponential or see exponential, that means we're going to use logs to solve them. Okay, so what it says is solve the equations without using a calculator. You will have radicals or logarithms in your answer. So basically, don't completely solve this down to a decimal solution. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to turn this into log form. So here's our b, our base, which is 4, and that's our a value. So that goes here. And then we set it equal to x. And it says to just leave it in log form. So that's really it. Pretty simple. Now this one, before we change it into log form, we need to get that exponential part with the x by itself. So we need to take away the 5 from both sides. Then we get 3x equals 7. And then just convert it to log form. It's a base of 3. And the a value is 7. We set it equal to x. And we are done. That is the last homework assignment for this whole quarter. Now all you have to do is focus on the final. Go to week 9 folder, check it out, watch the video in there. I posted it. Good luck. Hit me up. Contact me. Not hit me up. That sounds weird. Why would your teacher say that? Hit me up. DM me. PM. All right. We used to say PM. Now you guys say DM. All right.